Clara's life had always been orderly. Married to Mark for 7 years, she enjoyed the quiet rhythm of suburban life in Seattle. Their home was neat, filled with warmth, laughter, and small comforts. The aroma of fresh coffee in the mornings, soft music drifting from the living room, and evenings spent reading together or cooking simple meals. Clara loved Mark deeply. He was dependable, gentle, and kind. Their marriage was built on trust and routine, a quiet happiness that she had always cherished. Yet beneath the surface, a restlessness often whispered in her heart, a subtle yearning for something she couldn't quite name. Something exciting beyond the predictable hum of her days. The first sign of change came during a family reunion. Mark's extended family had gathered at their home for a weekend barbecue, an event Clara usually enjoyed because it was lively, full of conversation and laughter. That year, however, there was someone new. Ethan, Mark's nephew, had just returned from college. At 26, he carried himself with a quiet confidence, a presence that was both subtle and compelling. He wasn't loud or arrogant, but there was a magnetism in the way he spoke, in the calm intensity of his eyes that made people notice him. Clara had only met him briefly in the past, few polite exchanges at holiday gatherings. But this time something felt different. From the moment he stepped into the backyard, Clara noticed how he observed the people around him. There was an alertness. In him, a curiosity that seemed almost out of place in a casual family setting. He smiled at her briefly, and for a fleeting second, their eyes met in a way that left her unsettled, as if he saw something in her that no one else did. Clara shook off the feeling, telling herself it was her imagination. Ethan was family, nothing more could happen, and she needed to remind herself of that. The weekend passed in its usual blur of laughter, grilling burgers, and the soft chatter of relatives. Yet Clara couldn't ignore Ethan's presence. He was always nearby during conversations, sometimes offering a thoughtful comment, other times standing quietly as though he were trying to understand her. His gaze occasionally lingered, polite, but intense, and each time it did, Clara felt a flutter in her chest she hadn't felt in years. She blamed it on fatigue, telling herself she was imagining things. It wasn't until the rain began on Sunday afternoon that the real turning point came. Clara was inside, helping with last-minute preparations for a charity dinner Mark's family was hosting. The air smelled faintly of rain and wet leaves through the open windows, and the quiet hum of the city beyond their home created a calm backdrop. Ethan appeared at the doorway, holding a small package carefully wrapped in brown paper. His hair was damp from the rain, and his expression was hesitant, almost anxious. I wasn't sure who else to ask," he said, his voice softer than usual, almost vulnerable. "But I thought maybe you could help me." Clara blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Help you with what?" she asked cautiously, her voice even but her heart beginning to race. Ethan hesitated, his fingers fiddling with the edges. "Of the package. It's personal. Something I've wanted for a long time. I trust you." Clara's instincts flared. She had been taught to be cautious, to protect herself from situations that felt uncertain or dangerous. And yet, there was a softness in his eyes, a vulnerability that tugged at her heart. It wasn't manipulation. She could tell that much it was honesty, raw and open. Clara felt a strange pull, a mixture of concern and curiosity, something she hadn't felt in years. "Ethan, you know I love Mark," she said carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. "Whatever this is, it's probably better to talk to him first." I know, Ethan replied quickly, almost pleading. "It's not like that. I mean, it's complicated. But I needed someone to listen, someone I can trust." Clara felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. Here was a young man, her husband's nephew, sharing his feelings with her in such an honest way. She wanted to reassure him, to offer guidance, but she also felt a flutter of excitement she couldn't explain. She had spent so many years tending to others, focusing on the safe, predictable life she had chosen. Now, faced with Ethan's vulnerability, she realized there was a part of her that had been dormant for far too long apart that craved connection. Understanding and the thrill of emotion she had long suppressed. Before she could respond further, Ethan leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to be close to you, Clara. Not in a way that's wrong, but in a way that makes me feel alive. Can you just hear me out? Clara froze. Her mind raced, flashing through every warning she had ever given herself about boundaries, family, and loyalty. And yet there was something in her heart, a quiet, rebellious curiosity that urged her to listen, to understand, to simply hear. She nodded slowly, feeling her pulse quicken. "'Kay, I'll listen." Ethan's relief was palpable. He smiled, a small tentative smile that seemed to release tension he had been holding for years. Clara felt a mix of emotions herself: concern, attraction, and a deep curiosity about what he wanted to say. She didn't know what would come next, only that her orderly life had just shifted in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. That evening, Clara lay awake in her bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Rain streaked the windows, and the soft hum of the city felt unusually loud. She replayed Ethan's words over and over in her mind, wondering what it meant for her marriage, for her life, and for the unspoken desires she had ignored for so long. She thought about Mark, her husband, and the love they shared. She loved him deeply, and yet she couldn't deny the stirrings in her heart. The way Ethan's presence made her feel excited, noticed, alive, was something she hadn't felt. In years, her phone buzzed lightly on the nightstand. She picked it up and saw a message from Ethan. "Can we meet tomorrow? Just us. I need to explain everything." Clara stared at the screen, her fingers trembling. Could she really meet him? Alone, could she allow herself to entertain the idea of what he wanted to say? The questions swirled in her mind, but underneath the hesitation, there was a whisper of longing, a part of her that wanted to hear him out. The next morning arrived, gray and rainy, the clouds low over the city. Clara found herself preoccupied. With thoughts of Ethan, she moved through her day in a daze, going through the motions of breakfast, tidying the house, and exchanging polite conversation with Mark, who was busy at work. She couldn't bring herself to focus on anything except the meeting to come. When she arrived at the cafe downtown, spotted Ethan already seated, his expression nervous but composed. He waved awkwardly, brushing a hand through his damp hair. Clara felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear, her heart racing. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said softly as she sat down. "I didn't know who else to talk to. I needed to tell someone who could understand." Clara nodded, her pulse quickening. She had no idea what he was going to say, only that it mattered deeply. Ethan took a deep breath. "I've always admired you, Clara, not just because you're beautiful, but because of how you make people feel safe, seen, happy. I know you love my uncle, and I would never want to hurt that. But I had to be honest. I felt something more for you, something I couldn't ignore." Clara's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to speak, to warn him, to remind herself that boundaries existed, but the words caught in her throat. His honesty, his vulnerability stirred something inside her she hadn't felt in years. She began softly, but her voice faltered. She searched for words that could contain the storm of emotions within her. She thought about her life, her marriage, and the unexpected pull of someone who shouldn't stir these feelings at all. Ethan leaned back slightly, giving her space, sensing her turmoil. "I'm not asking for anything, Clara. I couldn't keep pretending I don't feel this. I had to tell you." Clara's mind raced. She felt guilt and excitement, fear and curiosity all at once. This confession had awakened something. Deep inside her, a longing she had carefully buried under years of routine and comfort. She realized that life wasn't as predictable as she had always thought. Sometimes emotions came when least expected, uninvited but impossible to ignore. Finally, she reached out, lightly brushing her hand over his, almost hesitantly. "I hear you, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling, "and I can't pretend it doesn't matter. Relief and gratitude softened Ethan's features. He didn't smile triumphantly or try to cross a line. He simply exhaled, as if a weight had lifted. The tension between them shifted, subtle but undeniable. Something had changed. Clara knew she had not made promises or crossed boundaries. Yet the quiet spark between them was real and impossible to ignore. As she left the cafe, Clara's mind was a whirlwind. Could she return to her life with Mark unchanged? Could she suppress the feelings Ethan had awakened? Or had this simple, honest confession set in motion a chain of emotions that would alter everything? She didn't know, and the uncertainty both terrified and thrilled her. Looking back over her shoulder, she saw Ethan watching her leave, a gentle smile lingering on his lips. She felt a tug in her chest, a bittersweet recognition that nothing would ever feel quite the same again. For the first time in years, Clara felt alive, aware of the storm of emotions she had kept hidden. She didn't know where this path would lead, only that she had taken the first step, one that would change everything in ways she could not yet imagine. The morning after her meeting with Ethan, Clara couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were tangled, replaying every word, every glance, every tiny gesture. She kept picturing Ethan's earnest eyes, the way his voice had softened, the tremor in his hands as he reached for hers. He had been honest, painfully honest, and that honesty had stirred something deep within her. She loved Mark, yes, but there had always been a part of her that longed for more than routine, more than safety, more than predictability. Ethan had opened a door she hadn't realized was still there, and now that it had been opened, there was no shutting it again. That afternoon, she found herself walking downtown, her mind still buzzing from the encounter. She had agreed, almost on impulse, to meet Ethan again, alone this time. She told herself it was simply to hear him out, to understand what he meant by his words. Yet, even as she navigated the familiar streets, she felt the faint thrill of anticipation. She wasn't sure whether it was fear, excitement, or some heady mixture of both. But her pulse quickened with every step. The cafe where they had met the day before seemed smaller somehow. It's more intimate, its corners softened by the warm light spilling from the windows. Clara entered, spotting Ethan already at their usual table, a quiet tension in his posture. He looked up and smiled when he saw her, a little hesitantly, as if unsure how she would respond to him. That small smile, gentle and vulnerable, made her chest tighten. "Hi," he said softly, standing briefly to greet her. His hand hovered awkwardly in the air, almost asking permission for contact. Clara responded with a nod and a faint smile. Sitting down, she felt a flutter of nerves she hadn't expected. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, his voice low, careful, almost reverent. "I know this is complicated, and I don't want to make anything harder than it already is." Clara took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the coffee cup ground her. "I wanted to come," she said slowly. I need to understand. I need to hear you out." He nodded, leaning back slightly in relief. "I've always admired you, Clara," he began, his eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously nervous and alive. "Not just because of who you are on the outside, but because of how you make people feel safe, appreciated, happy. I know you love Mark, and I respect that completely. I could never want to take that from you. I needed to tell you that I feel something more, something I can't explain, something I can't ignore." Claire felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. She had known there was an emotional spark between them, but hearing it articulated so openly made her heart ache in unexpected ways. She wasn't sure how to respond, how to navigate the tangle of loyalty, desire, and longing that his words had awakened. She swallowed hard, searching for words that could express her own conflicted feelings. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "This is complicated. I love Mark. I always will. But I can't deny that I feel something too, something I've buried for a long time." Ethan's expression softened, a mixture of relief and careful hope shining in his eyes. "That's all I needed," he said quietly. "I'm not asking you to do anything, Clara. I just needed you to know how I feel." I had to be honest. There was a moment of silence between them, filled with unspoken tension. Clara's mind raced. She thought about her life with Mark, the comfort, the love, the deep companionship they shared. She thought about Ethan, the way he looked at her, the earnestness in his voice, the vulnerability that mirrored her own hidden longings. It was a heady mix of emotions, impossible to ignore, impossible to neatly categorize. Outside, rain began to fall again, a gentle patter against the cafe windows, adding a rhythm to the silence. Clara watched droplets slide down the glass, feeling a strange kinship with their fluid, unpredictable paths. She realized that her own heart had begun to move in unpredictable directions as well. I want to be honest with you too, Clara," finally said, her voice trembling. "I felt something, a kind of longing I didn't know how to name. And now, hearing you say it, it makes me realize that I'm not alone in feeling it. But I don't know what to do about it. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to betray Mark, but I also can't pretend that it doesn't matter." Ethan nodded slowly, his hand brushing against hers lightly across the table, careful not to overstep. "You don't have to make a decision, Clara. Not now, not ever. I wanted you to know. And I wanted us to have this moment, this understanding." Clara felt a shiver run through her. The touch of his hand, so gentle, so respectful, made her heart flutter. It was not a physical longing alone. It was emotional, deep, a recognition of something she had denied herself for years. The intensity of the connection was disarming, thrilling, and frightening all at once. I think I needed this too," Clara admitted softly. "To hear someone else feel what I've felt, to understand that it's not just me, that maybe there's more to life than the routine I've been living. That there are emotions I've ignored, connections I've avoided." Ethan's eyes shone with quiet intensity. "That's all I could hope for," he said. "To share this honestly and to know that you feel it too, in some way." For the next hour, they talked quietly, carefully. Not about romance in the traditional sense, not about actions or consequences, but about emotions, raw, honest, sometimes messy emotions. They spoke of loneliness, of admiration, of the yearning for connection that often went unspoken. Clara found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years, revealing parts of herself she had kept hidden, even from Mark. And Ethan listened, really listened, validating her feelings without judgment, without expectation. It was intoxicating. Clara realized that the connection they shared was not about infidelity or betrayal. It was about understanding, empathy, and the courage to face emotions that life often made us ignore. She felt seen, truly seen, in a way she hadn't felt in years. It was emotional intimacy, raw and unfiltered. And it stirred something deep in her heart. When they finally left the cafe, the rain had slowed to a soft drizzle. They walked together under the muted gray sky, the city streets glistening with reflections of light. Neither spoke much. Words felt inadequate. Instead, they shared a quiet presence, each step bringing a mixture of longing and restraint. Clara knew that returning to her ordinary life would feel different now, that nothing could go back to the way it had been. By the time Clara reached home, her mind was a whirlwind. She wondered how she could navigate the storm of feelings awakened. By Ethan's confession, could she return to Mark unchanged? Could she suppress the emotions she now recognized as undeniable? Or had this simple, honest conversation irrevocably shifted her heart, opening a door to desires she hadn't admitted even to herself? Inside, the house felt smaller, quieter, yet heavier. She moved through her evening routine mechanically, preparing dinner, setting the table, all the while replaying Ethan's words in her mind. She could feel the subtle changes in herself, a heightened awareness of emotions, a flutter of anticipation at the thought of him, and a recognition that some part of her had awakened after years of dormancy. Mark arrived home later, cheerful and unsuspecting. Clara greeted him with warmth, masking the storm within her. She laughed at his jokes, shared small stories of her day, and poured him a glass of wine. But underneath her calm exterior, her mind wandered to Ethan. She recalled the honesty in his eyes, the tremor in his voice, the gentle hand that had briefly touched hers. She felt a bittersweet pull, guilt intertwined with exhilaration, fear entwined with longing. Later that night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep felt impossible. She replayed every word of their conversation, every fleeting glance, every subtle touch. She realized that emotions could be complicated, messy, and unpredictable. They were not wrong necessarily, but they were powerful and consuming. She had always believed that love was simple, steady, and contained. Now, she knew it could be multifaceted, and sometimes it came when least expected. Stirring feelings that demanded acknowledgement, Clara thought about the days ahead. Knowing she would see Ethan again, that he would remain in her life, she wasn't sure what form it would take: friendship, guidance, emotional connection. But she knew one thing for certain. Her heart had changed, quietly but irreversibly. Something had shifted. The rhythm of her life, the way she felt about love, about connection, about herself, had been transformed. And as she drifted into a restless sleep, a part of her smiled softly, aware that life, in all its unpredictability, had opened a door she couldn't ignore. A door to emotion, longing, and the quiet electric pull of a heart awakening to possibilities she had long denied herself.